Dora, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jen?
I'm good. I was just curious about what you're teaching these days.
Yeah, well, this week actually last week, one of the students in my irest classes wanted to dive deeper into a particular topic. So this week we're talking about trust. And I love it when students bring topics to me because, as you know, I like to teach a certain theme every week because I view meditation as something that helps us to bring our practice into life and so I love bringing in something that may be more relevant, maybe something that we can all relate to at some stage of our lives. And so this student of mine wanted to talk about trust, and I was just thinking about that because I'm like, okay, trust. Well, what does trust mean? And what do you feel when you think about trust? So I might even just let you have, give yourself a moment, and for the all the listeners at home, as you're thinking about trust, how do you feel? What kind of sensations are coming up for you? Like, do you feel it in a certain area, maybe in the heart or the belly or anywhere else? And what are the sensations? Maybe there's some sort of contraction somewhere, or maybe there's an expansion somewhere. And perhaps there are certain emotions or thoughts that are coming up as you think about trust. Some people might think of trust and feel there's this kind of calmness or grounding. And then other people might think trust, oh, that's really scary. Like, I'm not okay here. So I'm curious, what do you think about, like, what's your experience when you think about trust, Jen?
I guess, yeah, all these different possibilities sort of emerged as you were talking about that. Because, trust, of course, was lighting up in the heart, this trusting with ourselves as well as within relationships. And then also what you were saying, like physically, like just being able to trust that my body's going to support me, or um, especially as I'm aging, that becomes actually such a thing in my brain since I've turned 50. That I've got this all other half of my time, and how is that going to be with my body supporting me, and how am I supporting my body so I can age gracefully? So yeah, those were some of the things that emerged for me. What emerged in the conversations with your students?
Well, it's it was internal for them. Some of them did tell me afterwards, but I think that for many of us, we struggle with trust. I don't think there's any, well, I haven't spoken with anyone who feel like I have complete and utter trust in myself and everything that's going on. There's probably something that you feel like, oh, I wish I can have a little bit more trust on. And so in the session, we actually talked. Well, I only did one session so far. In my next class, I'll bring this into to actually the student who brought it up. So I imagine that group is going to be more interactive. But for me, I felt like, well, what came up was there are different types of scenarios that trust may come up, right? You might have trust towards someone. There may be certain people that you really trust for certain things in life. Or maybe you don't have anyone you can trust in life. And so that could bring up very different feelings. But also, in another one of our episodes, we talked about perspective. So it's also whatever you are going through right now that is most at your forefront, or that you bring most attention to, then likely that's probably the relationship you have around trust is probably around the thing that you're most concerned with right now. And that may not be the representative of your life, even though it might feel like that's my life right now. I can't trust anyone, or that I can't trust everyone, or whatever scenario you find yourself in. But sometimes we can get really narrow and think that, okay, this is most important for me right now. So everything is about this. And so my experience of the world is in relation to this thing that's on my mind. So there's just definitely an external component to it, whether I can trust the people around me. And then there's also that self trust, right? Can I trust myself? Can I trust that I always have my best interest at heart? Can I trust my intuition? Can I trust my gut feeling? Can I trust the voices in my head or my decisions that I'm making? So there's self trust. And then there's also trust in life, trust in the universe, trust that things are already unfolding just as they should be. And for some of us, that's really, really hard to take, to say, to look at the state of um, the all the things that are happening or have been happening around us for the last couple of years, um, to think that all of this was supposed to happen. Like, this doesn't feel right. It is not okay. How can I be okay with this? How can I trust that this process is unfolding as it should be? Because from your perspective or my perspective, there are probably many things that we wish were different. And so those are the three areas that came up for me as I was exploring what trust meant. Anything coming up for you as we continue?
As you were sharing that, it kind of just made me go back to this idea that, when you were mentioning the spiritual aspect, perhaps, and I feel like at this point in my life, and maybe I wasn't ready when I was younger, I think there was a lot of just figuring out stuff in the world and whether you could trust yourselves or the relationships you're in. Could you trust your parents, your friends, everything, right? And maybe it's supposed to be that way. Because I
Mhm.
am so grateful. I always think back, like, I am so grateful for the practice, right? The irest practice, where coming from a place of wholeness and that everything is perfectly unfolding just as it is. Um, it makes everything else like you can trust, because I've got that underlying um, feeling that everything is whole and everything is, within this unchanging container that I can trust. So even though I might feel a certain way, temporarily irritated or frustrated or lacking, I can be with it, and I'm okay, because I have this underlying unchanging trust of my wholeness and the wholeness of life. But it is interesting because, if some people are not there, um, we also have to trust that, even though you and I have continued to study and have these expertise, um, we don't need to fix and change them, and just trust that the process is working for them too, even though they seem like they're suffering and they say that they're suffering. And just like in the state of the world, Richard had said something about, um, you tend to your garden, with all the weeds and the flowers, everything that's in your garden. And you don't necessarily go to somebody else's garden and just start picking out their weeds, and their plants and fruits, right? So if we can all think of our lives maybe as this garden that we're tending, and as we're each cultivating, and maybe we can, share seeds, or come visit, or if someone invites you to, help each other. But other than that, just trust that everything's unfolding in their garden just as it is, and that everything's unfolding in each of our gardens just as they are in this, planetary garden that we live on.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love the garden analogy. And so, yeah, I think that for a lot of us, we can perhaps work on self-trust a little bit, and in trusting ourselves, and we are more able to kind of bring that out into the world. Because I think that each and every one of us, we have a sense of intuition. We may not know how to tune into it. We may have been taught not to tune into it because it's not real, or, but intuition, if we wanted to just purely talk about the physical or the physiology, it's what got us through millions of life. It's our survival mechanism. It's our gut feeling of detecting that something is not right in the environment, and it's prepping us to either fight and find that threat and fight it, or run away from it. It's the fight or flight response, right? And Richard Miller, our teacher, our IRES teacher, he um, he talks about how the amount of information that we take in through the body, through the subconscious or unconscious mind, it's like billion bits of information per second. Whereas when it starts to get distilled up to our conscious thinking mind, we're processing it at 40 bits per second. So it's like, oof, like we're really dealing with such a narrow view when it comes to our conscious mind, but our bodies have this capacity to take in all of this information that's always telling us whether we're safe or whether we're in danger. And so, that gut feeling, you can call it an intuition that something is not right, but your conscious mind cannot explain it in that moment. And that's what's really helped us with our survival for millions of years. But now we're in a different world, obviously, and we're not facing the same threats and danger, but that we still have that mechanism. Our mind, our bodies are constantly scanning for our environment, our external and internal environment, to see whether we're safe. And now a lot of our threats come through our internal thoughts and worries, and they're self-created oftentimes, and it's danger that we can't physically run away from because it's in our heads. Then it kind of, and also there's this kind of move towards this thinking that the thinking mind is superior, right? We need to always be able to rationalize and make sense of it, of everything, and there has to be a logical reason why we do certain things. That our feeling bodies, our intuition, almost for a time, was thought of as woo woo. Oh, don't believe that. You can't just follow your gut. Like, you might even get laughed at when you say, "Why did you do that?" "Oh, it was a hunch." And people would just laugh and goes, "Oh, well, we can't, rely on that, right?" But now more and more, we're starting to realize that we're missing out on most of the information if we ignore the messengers that are coming through the body. And science is actually, uh, confirming that, or that actually we don't want to ignore what we're feeling. And so when now I think we're learning to how can we come back to ourselves? How can we start to listen to our intuition? Um, how do we even decipher whether this feeling I'm having is my intuition, whether it's deeper wisdom, or whether it's something else? And so we're really needing to reconnect with that. And that takes time. And also trust takes time to cultivate. We can't just say, "Oh, just trust it," or "Just trust me." Like, you need to have time to and have experiences with, say, a person. If you're wanting to establish trust in that relationship, there's got to be opportunities to show you that this person is trustworthy. So over time, you see that, oh, this person has been trustworthy, I can trust this person. Same as your own intuition, and tapping into that and think, oh, this is my intuition, I'm going to listen to it this time and see what happens. Oh, it worked well. Okay, I'm going to do it next time. Oh, that worked well too. I'm not going to do it this time. Oh, it didn't work so well. Then, so you start to kind of over time build that relationship with yourself. And that's how I'm seeing that. That's one way of building self-trust, is that now you're able to be more tuned in to what your heart or your body is telling you, and that you're trusting that you can trust these signals, and interpret them in a way that's going to be helpful for you.
It's interesting, all the different things you were bringing in, and what sort of came to mind. And I'm not as good with as details with you are as you are, but there was, I think it was, the acronym was NIACM, I believe. It was a trauma sort of related workshop, series of workshops. And what's beautiful is that, all the different trainings that we have within yoga, there's so much science now that's backing all the different, they're backing each other, which is lovely. So if certain people, their pathway to feeling this wholeness is through more cognitive means, it's fine, because there's actually so much out there, right? And it makes me think back about how, when you were saying about our body, right? And trusting that it's going to maybe fight, flight, freeze, or faint even. And they were describing all of those, how there's actually in the body, like in our cells, after repeated behavior, our body starts to learn that, if this happens, this is what I need to do. Because when we were just a lump of baby, we didn't know as much yet, even though the body was growing and starting to learn things. But now, as full grown adults, we've gone through a lot, physically, emotionally, and all the sheaths. And that it remembers. Thankfully, our body remembers. So, and I remember hearing this one thing where it related more to shame, but it was the idea that, the first time we touch maybe something hot as a child, under the age of 5, when someone tells you like, oh, there's, something's hot, that might be the first recognition of shame. But it doesn't have to be if that person, on the other side says, oh, I just wanted to keep you safe. Good job. It's okay. So the shame disappears. But our body remembers now that, like, we're not going to keep touching that thing for the next 50 years. And, oh, it's hot. Like, our body now knows, right? On maybe a cognitive level, on even like feeling the heat on the palms of our hands, right? So we are, we can trust that our body is actually supporting us. It's not just our cognitive mind, but all the different sheaths have, been growing with us as we experience life. So that's, I'm grateful that I can trust that I know my body's here. It's helping me, from the years and years and years of evolution, even, right? To bring us to this point where inflammation is not a negative thing. It just means that it's protecting something, or, all the different, feelings in our body are also sending us messages like, you need to go to the hospital. There's something happening in your body.
Oh, yeah, I think that a lot of us, we're just learning that language of the body again. And for so long, this was not of importance for a lot of people. And so, either way, like, having, whether you naturally already have a trust that the body has its own wisdom and it loves you and it's trying to do what it knows best to do to protect you, and it may not always be helpful in a certain situation, but from the viewpoint that your body's actually doing whatever it can to keep you safe, that's wonderful. Like, if you're able to tap into that. For certain people, that may not be something that's easily accessible, and they have to start somewhere. And so I think however small a step that you need, can just, again, it's an increase, not like, oh, you have to do this to be successful. It's like, well, what if you felt that you couldn't trust the body? Are there ways for you to come to a place where you can trust the body just a little bit? Or maybe there's a certain aspect of your body that you can trust. I trust that I can stand up and my legs will support me, and that may be, easy for some and maybe not for others, but whatever it is, start small. What are some things that maybe you took for granted? And so, yeah, I think I think self-trust is something that a lot of us can benefit from cultivating, or strengthening in some way. And that when we have that trust, that self-trust, we tend to rely less on the external world and people telling us that we're okay, because we're going to know we're okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might be easier to open the door for us to trust the universe as well. Like, when you feel you're safe and you're okay, then there's room for other things as well, I guess, right? Because when you're fearful, when there's a sense of you're not going to survive, or when survival is threatened, then it's really hard to then say, yeah, you'll be fine. The world loves you, right? You're going to be really like, no, it's dangerous. I need to protect myself. So I think that when we can be grounded in ourselves, and our irest practice is a wonderful way for help us to get grounded to tap into the body sensations and start to have that communication with the body, that it actually is more than that. It's more than just feeling safe in your body. It's about, okay, when I am feeling safe in my body, now I can start to go out into the world and see the world in a whole new way. And even seeing the world, and trusting that things are unfolding as they should.
I think you brought up a key point. It's this, we're in this human body. So, might begin with us being able to trust, trusting ourselves, um, trusting in the physical body, trusting our thoughts, our emotions, anything that's presenting itself. So when we come from a place of trust, or even noticing that we're not trusting ourselves, because sometimes people aren't even aware that maybe you're not taking that next step in whatever situation, it's because you don't have a trust that you're going to be okay, or that you can support yourself, or um, that you can be resilient. So even having that awareness, first of all, like, oh, that's why I'm not doing it, because I don't trust that I'm going to do a good job, or I don't trust what I'm going to say or how I'm going to act. So having that awareness, and then maybe feeling your way, well, what feels okay? Yeah, I agree. Starting somewhere, and even just little steps, realizing, first of all, yeah, you're not trusting yourself. And that's why it's preventing you from even going for that new job, like making a change in your life, or going for that new relationship, um, or yeah, anything, right? Anything. If we can realize that there's something maybe that's missing, or that we're not trusting, or there's a contraction that's there, and just really listening to what it's trying to tell us. Or maybe it's not the right time. Maybe it's not the right time for me to make that movement. So
Yeah. And I find that once we can bring in that or cultivate that trust, that self trust, um, it makes it so much easier for us to face uncertainties ahead. Because
mhm.
I think that part of us needing certain things to be a certain way, it gives us that sense of safety and security that, oh, once I get this job, then I can get this house, and then I'll be financially able to support myself and blah blah blah. And then so there's actually could be a lot of anxiety around the perceived situation, right? Because that's what you have in your mind, that you need to have things happen in this way for you to be okay. And of course, as we know, life happens, and life can happen in such a way that, coincidentally follows your plan. And also it can happen completely the opposite as what you wanted, right? So having that trust that even when things don't go as planned, can we tap into our own bodies and be in the moment and be grounded and know what the next step, what is the next spontaneous action I need to take? Um, and that way, even though it might seem for some people that, oh my gosh, that's really scary to not know where you're going, how can we trust that things will just unfold? I think that there's a bit of both. It's not just that I'm completely trusting the universe and say, oh, okay, I'll just sit here, I'll just wait for things to happen. It's kind of both. You're trusting in yourself. You're constantly checking in. What am I feeling? What is my body telling me? What is the next step? And in that way, you can trust that you are always taking what is the next right step for you. And that as you take a step, the universe can take a step, and then you take a step. And then it's kind of like an ebb and flow. It's a bit of both. So that there is that trust in yourself in making the decisions you need to make. And then also a stepping back and trusting that the universe is also playing a role, and things are happening in such a way that, what if, and we can have different perspective around this, oh, the world is against me or the world is for me. in the end, the world will just be as it is. Reality will just be as it is. But now you get to choose your experience of it. Do I want to see this as it happening for me? And if it is happening for me, what can I take from this? What can I learn from this? How will this inform my next step? Right. Um, so yeah, I think that, it's a beautiful thing when we start to cultivate that sense of self-trust because it opens us up to receive and experience the world in a very different way.
You made me just feel like connection, right? This connectedness. So when we can trust in ourselves and everyone around us in the world, just to whatever that extent and whatever that looks like for somebody, it's that connectedness that's always there. That we actually are a non-separateness. We are ultimately united, and I guess we don't feel that sometimes when we're feeling this, distrust of ourselves and others. And maybe it's okay to not like try not to judge ourselves in those moments. It's just um it's just a concealment. It's just a momentary sort of message that something's amiss. I'm going to feel my way and see what's happening here. And I think more and more when people realize that these are messages, rather than just ignoring them, they can see it as something that's really important here. There's a feeling happening. I'm feeling this disconnect, this distrust, um, and why is that? And what's the next action? You don't even have to go, I think, into your cognitive mind deeply. I feel like it can arise if we give it space.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, it's beautiful and a great reminder that you just brought up is that just because we're talking about trust and cultivating trust, it doesn't mean that we think trust is better than distrust because they're both different. They're just different sides of the same coin, and we need both. And there will be moments where you don't feel like you can trust, whether it be someone or whatever it is. And like you say, those are messengers to say, oh, something is not right, or something, maybe it's not even something's not right. Maybe something just needs my attention right now.
Mhm.
And so, um, one of the things I really love about the irest practice is that nothing is right or wrong. Nothing is good or bad. We're all just questioning, what is our experience right now? What is it asking of me right now? What is it pointing us to? And so, even in the moments where you don't feel trust, it's telling you something. It's telling you that, oh, this is what you feel. There is a next action that you might want to take if you wanted to go down this way, or you can choose to go down that way. And it's like, you can choose either way. It's fine. Right? You can continue to feel, yeah, a certain way until you feel that it's no longer helpful for you, right? And then you'll probably look for something else. Yeah.
It seems like maybe there's some lessons then, some tips that maybe we can offer. Is there any sort of last tips that people can maybe try out in the next little bit?
Yeah, I think that, it's trust is not something that you can just say, oh, just trust it, right? So it's something that's going to take time to build. And for those who find trust really difficult, even little steps of building trust could feel really difficult. And so if that's difficult for you, maybe we're not even maybe not even asking yourself to trust. Maybe we'll just question it. Like when you feel like you can't trust something or you can't trust yourself, um, instead of pushing that away and say, "Oh, it's bad that I'm not trusting." Maybe if it feels okay, give yourself a moment just to acknowledge that, "Oh, this is a moment where I'm not trusting, and it's okay." Um, and then just notice how that feels when you just accept that this is present, because this again is a witnessing that we're bringing in. And I think that if we can witness ourselves, that already creates a little bit of space. So we're already less fused with our experience. So that might be where someone might start and say, can I just witness myself in moments where I'm not able to trust without judging myself, without calling it bad or wrong? Can I just accept that, oh, in this moment, I'm not trusting. This is interesting. That's it, right? But then for those of us who maybe have a sense of trust that we can trust, then maybe we can start building on that and start to tap into or get tuned in with your body. And there's certain many grounding practices that we can offer in an IRS practice and also in many other modalities. But whatever works well for you, maybe even taking a few deep breaths so that you can feel grounded in your body, and then see whether your intuition can come through a little bit easier. And you can just, it's a trial and error. You're going to start practicing and seeing, oh, is this my intuition? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But you're starting to establish that trust with yourself, and you'll probably, as you continue, will get clearer and know that, oh, when it's my intuition or when it's my inner wisdom that's speaking to me, there's a certain combination of sensation in my body versus when it's maybe my fears or my ego or what my insecurities that are talking to me. It has a different feeling tone, and you'll start to get more familiarized with how you feel as you tap into these internal messages. And it's really, really doing the work, doing the practice for you to figure out what does it feel like as you tune into these different messages, and building trust that way. What do you think, Jen?
Oh, I agree completely. I think if, just taking times, these times when you're feeling maybe more at ease and that you can meet something like trust, if that's, something that's really big for somebody, um, meet it when you're more at ease or calm in a familiar environment, and feel, like you said, like, what does trust even feel like in the body when I'm trusting a situation? Because a lot of people don't have that connection with themselves. So feeling like this is what trust feels like, it feels maybe like a relaxation in the muscles, a release in the muscles, breath in the entire body, and then taking a moment to feel the opposite, right? So when does it feel like when I'm not trusting anything or anyone? Like, oh, there's tension in the belly, like my face is starting to make a funny expression. So being able to notice it when you're in a comfortable space, so that when you go out in the world and you're in these situations that we were talking about, you can like, oh, okay, my face is starting to scowl. I feel the tension. Don't go down that dark alley tonight by yourself, right? Or, like, oh, I'm feeling very like spacious and open. What's this? Oh, maybe this new person could be a friend. I'm feeling this warmth. So yeah, as we build, I think, a greater connection, maybe this tuning in and that intuition, like you were saying, um, we might be just better connected to it and help us with trust.
Yeah. Mm, absolutely. Well, it was so much fun talking to you as always, Jen.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, we'll see. We'll do this again soon.
Yeah, see you again. Bye.
Bye.